everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Women Serve 2. Today we have Amanda Holland with us. She is a MQ-9 sensor operator. She's actually kind of been married to the military, and so she hasn't been married, no kids, until recently she decided to start this journey on getting a kid. While she was serving as a brand new master sergeant, she had the opportunity to attend the Women Initiatives Team Female Fitment event in Ohio in 2018, where she learned that so many women had similar issues with flying gear. For those listening, sensor operators are considered aircrew, them correctly, uniforms fitting them correctly, and sadly, similar instances where uneducated or apathetic people would treat women as a nuisance rather than an asset. So because of this, she got very involved with standing up with the Creech Air Force Base WIT in 2022. And for those who know my journey, I was also stationed at Creech. So I will tell you, there is nothing there. Just creating this at Creech, especially with childcare and uniforms and everything else that could potentially impact a woman, is amazing that she helped stand that up. So Amanda, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This opportunity is awesome and I really appreciate it.
I've already talked about that I was at Creech. So let's talk about your journey at Creech. Like, how did you decide to become a sensor operator? Where have you started? Where have you been? And your journey to where you are now.
Okay. So my journey with the Air Force started in 2007 at Creech Air Force Base, which is where my first duty location. And actually back then, I had joined the Air Force to be an intel analyst, so an imagery analyst, if you will. We didn't really have a tech school for sensor operators back then. This was also back when, if you think of like the early 2000s, where the war in Afghanistan was, kicking off really steadily, and MQ-9s were like the number one thing. So they actually kind of forced us over. They're like, hey, do you want to be a sensor operator? And some of us were like, what is that? And they're like, we don't really know, but we know we need them. And so I was like, yeah, sure. And they're like, cool, you were going to go anyway. I'm like, okay. So I actually had orders to Beale Air Force Base to do imagery analysis there, and they switched them over to Creech. So showed up to Creech Air Force Base in May of 2007, flew my first combat mission by myself in August of 2008. So that was a really quick turn for training. We didn't have like all the formal training that we have now, which is great. But it was an interesting time to be an airman, to be a female, to be an MQ-9 operator, because like you had mentioned before, in the introduction, some people don't realize that we're actually aircrew members, right? And that's been a long battle for us, being recognized as that. And if you can imagine as well, back in those early 2000s, we were taking pilots from manned cockpits and forcing them into flying the MQ-9. So girl, when I say I had a rude awakening into the Air Force, like I had a reason as to why I wanted to join, but when I got there, it was like, you're a chick, you're enlisted, so you don't really know what's going on, and this plane is completely stupid. It's not a fighter jet. It's not this sexy airplane. So that was the kind of the rude awakening that I came into the career field with. And luckily I had some really good mentors and people that kind of showed me that ugly side, but then also showed me the really cool side. Had a female pilot. She was a prior F-16 pilot. She taught me how to properly wear my flight suit. For example, you have to wear your t-shirt under your flight suit, and if you wear it at a certain length, you get a t-shirt line around your butt cheeks. She was like, or specific underwear, for example. You shouldn't wear specific types of underwear so that people can see. It was a very interesting time in my life where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, But I had some really great people in my corner that helped me through getting through all of that combat. I deployed to Afghanistan in 2010 for about 4.5-5 months, where I did launch recovery operations out at Kandahar Airfield. And that was a rude awakening as well. I couldn't go anywhere by myself because I was a female. Luckily, I had an outstanding pilot with me that he, anytime I needed to go anywhere, he was kind of my escort, if you will, to make sure I was safe. Even on the transit out there, we stopped at a location and had to stay there for a couple of weeks. And it was, a lot of what do you call it? Like sexual harassment, sexual assault things that were happening. And it was like, he was like, hey, like, I want to make sure that you're safe. So we're just going to meet up for chow and like all that stuff. So it was good. And my call sign's Agent, by the way. So I might refer to myself as Agent every now and again.
I did notice that in your form. I was like, is she a special agent? So now it makes sense.
Yeah, I'll show it because this is a perfect time for that. So I earned my call sign Agent back whenever I was at Creech the first time. Sorry, this is going to turn into a long story, but I love it. I had gone into a combat mission, which I can't dive too deep into, but bottom line is that we had conducted a strike and a couple of the people survived the strike. The combatants survived the strike. We had to go search for them. I found them, and then I continued to track them for hours upon hours upon hours. And they're like, dude, she was like the special agent, like she knew what was going on, right? And call sign stories, you do the really, really heroic thing, but then you do the really stupid thing. So back then, let's draw it back to the early, like 2010 timeframe, where I like to refer to myself as sick. I used to go lay in the tanning bed a few times a week, and they offered a spray on tan for free. They're like, hey, we're trying this new formula. You want to try it? And I was like, hell yeah, I like free. Girl, I was orange, like Oompa Loompa orange. So my call sign was like Agent Orange, like no shenanigans. That's how I ended up with the call sign Agent. So it's really, really cool, but then also kind of not so cool. But I mean, I was like,
it's a very good story though.
Yeah. I was like literally walking around the squadron with I was like, no, you can't see me, I'm orange. It was hilarious though. But it was awesome. So now I'm known as Agent. A lot of people refer to me as that in the military world. Okay, where were we?
So you're deployed in Kandahar.
Yeah, deployed in Kandahar. Came back from that deployment, continued flying missions for a little bit. I came back from that deployment in May of 2010, and then I PCS to Holland Air Force Base in October of 2010. And then shortly after, we started the formal training unit for MQ-9 operations. So I ended up teaching at the FTU for 4 years, did all the different simulator training, flight training, operations group. Standoval is where I left that base at as a staff sergeant, which is pretty cool. I'm one of the blessed people in the RPA community that was able to procure promotion relatively quickly. So I was a 7-year staff sergeant, 6-year staff sergeant, something like that. And then, to watch us kind of progress through the promotion ranks, if you will, in the RPA community has always been a blessing to me because I've also always worked my ass off. Holloman was an amazing assignment for the longest time until it wasn't. This is kind of where tying into why I joined the Air Force and what kind of set me up for wanting to have my own baby now. This is kind of where that culminates, if you will. So I was stationed at Holloman from 2010 to 2014. I'm from a small town, Illinois. Girl, I graduated with 35 people. 35, not 350, not 30, no, 30. And we, small town in Illinois, all grew up together, best friends throughout our lives and all that fun stuff. So my friend Matthew, he had joined the Air Force and he was like, Amanda, like, this is it. He was like, if you ever wanted to get out of home, this is your opportunity to. The Air Force has been so great to me. He got stationed out at Luke Air Force Base. He was doing sheet metal on F-16s at the time. And we stayed in touch throughout his whole military career. I ended up joining about a year after he did. Anytime I would drive through Phoenix, I would stop by, meet with him, and he ended up getting married. He has a beautiful daughter, Lily, who I think is 13 or 14, I want to say. And I got to meet his daughter and be at his wedding as well. So it was pretty awesome. But he and we were like best friends that kind of knew we wanted to get, like, we loved each other, but we didn't. Like, we were intimate with one another, but we kind of knew like our paths would always stay connected. And so since we were little kids, we had always joked about like, oh, you're my 30-year plan. When we turn 30, if we're not with anybody else, like we know that this is going to work. And so we ended up, he got married. That sadly ended in divorce for him and her. They remained friends and all that stuff, but it just wasn't working out. So he was getting ready to, at Holloman at the time, we were losing the German aircraft Tornadoes, if I remember correctly, whatever the German.
I think you're right.
Yeah. And so the Germans were leaving, and we were bringing the F-16s over, which is now where the F-16 FTU is. And this was back in 2012 or 2013 is where I was working at Operations Group Stanival, and I was coordinating a lot of the airspace stuff for the F-16s and like trying to make sure that they would have all their ducks in a row when they started coming into the base and making sure they had the facilities and all that stuff. Anyway, so he was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get orders there. And I was like, no shit, like we're 26, like we can try this out, you know? And then he ended up losing his life in a motorcycle accident about a few weeks later. That was probably one of the hardest times. As I look back at Holloman, it was one of the most beautiful times professionally for myself. But that one like really hit home. And that's kind of where, I had mentioned in my bio that I've been married to the Air Force for such a long time, because that assignment was where I was fully supported with the leadership that I had, with, a lot of the personal struggles I was going with, binge drinking, getting in trouble, making bad decisions and all that stuff. I had some leaders there that were like, we know this isn't Amanda, so we know that you're hurting and we know that you need help. So we're going to do what we can to get you back to where you belong, which is, happy, healthy, supporting the airmen, supporting the mission. That's something that I've always been super passionate about. And so luckily I survived all of that. I'm here. I'm doing well. I spent, the rest of my assignment there. I PCSed from Holloman in 2014, and I went to go teach at our tech school, if you will, like the first phase of our tech school at the basic sensor operator course at Randolph Air Force Base in Texas, in San Antonio. So I was selected to go teach out there. Not that it would be written anywhere, but I was the first female instructor to teach at that schoolhouse. No big deal.
You go, girl.
Yeah. And it's kind of one of those things where, when I have that conversation with people and I bring that point up, whenever I used to bring it up, I used to feel guilty. Like I have to celebrate the fact that I was the first female, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't want, pomps and circumstances to be like, oh, Amanda, like she's the shit. Like she was the first, but like, it's kind of a big
still
deal.
A big deal.
And so it's just one of those things where, being a woman in the military, it's such a convoluted, interesting dynamic to be a part of. Anyway, I taught at the schoolhouse for 3 years. I volunteered for deployment doing, it used to be called TCN duty, third country nationals, but then it switched to other country nationals, so OCN. And it's essentially where I deployed to Kuwait, Ali Asalim in Kuwait, and I ended up getting promoted to tech over that deployment as well. Like I was up for promotion, and then I found out I was selected while I was out there. So they bumped me up to the flight in COIC. So I got to be in charge of, I had one senior, one master, one tech, and then me. And we oversaw 100 airmen from all different paths of careers. Like all we did in the TCN duty was, it was called force protection. And essentially we contracted help from the local community to pour concrete, to take out the trash, to clean the buildings, clean the bathrooms and all that stuff. So force protection's job was to monitor those individuals while they were doing those jobs. And that was probably one of the most interesting deployments, because not only was it outside of my sensor operator world, it was learning airmen from all these other career fields that have their own challenges, learning that some career fields don't really care about regulations, and me coming in as I was the only enlisted flyer in our flight. And so they're like, you're so by the rules. And I was like, well, yeah. Like there's a reason why they write them, and I'm sorry, you're gonna have to shave your face today. Like I'm not gonna argue with you about this. You just shave your face. And if you need to go get a waiver, go talk to the doctor about it. But until you do that, you need to do that. I was very black and white back in those days. Anyway, there were just a lot of things that we learned from that. Our airmen that were on that, we ended up getting an award for like team of the year. It was a eye-opening experience. I had a couple of the best leaders in my corner that would help me through all the different challenges. The senior master sergeant, she was an African-American female, and, she came out there. I'm not going to say she was non-involved, but she was basically told, like, if you don't do this, there will be repercussions, if you will, which is kind of jacked up. not like actual she was going to get in trouble, but like if you don't do this, your career will not progress, which was super, super weird. But it was great to have her on my side. I remember going into her office and on days where the airmen were like really testing us, I would just kind of like shrivel on the floor. I'm like, please help me. How do I tell these people to stop doing stupid things? Like they were doing some wild stuff. Things, yeah, I don't even care to
They
share.
always find something to get into trouble.
Just her very, I don't know. It was just interesting. We ended up, out of the 100 people that we had there, only 95 of them, which is actually a pretty high percentage, 95 of them fulfilled the 6-month deployment. The other 5 got sent home early or, got an Article 15, whatever. So it was a very interesting time in my life. That 6-month deployment was a defining moment for me as well, because that taught me that, MQ9 operations wasn't everything. It was all that I knew, but it wasn't like everything that I needed to continue to build myself and then also help the other people around me. Like there are some people from that deployment that I still keep into contact with. There was one of the ladies that was out there. She was a senior airman at the time. She just got promoted to master sergeant this last year. And I got to go to her promotion ceremony in the Pentagon. You know what I mean? Like it's just such a small world. So that was a very interesting deployment, but I volunteered for it. When I was teaching at Randolph, one of our guys had just PCS'd in from AFSOC. And if you know anything about AFSOC, their mission is constant. MQ9 operations are already 24/7, 365. When it goes into the special operations stuff, it's a little bit more wild. Yeah, just PCS'd in, hadn't even been on station for 3 years, like literally not even through his upgrade to be a podium instructor. And they're like, hey, he got hit with this deployment. He didn't want to go. And I was like, sign me up, coach. I was having a little bit of a rough patch teaching the same content over and over again, some interpersonal issues that I was having in the office as well, that I was just like, yeah, I'll go. And it was probably one of the best decisions I've made in my career so far, or at that time, was getting out of my comfort zone and like really trusting in myself. Like I went out there as a one-by person, like literally not knowing anybody from anywhere to making some lifelong friendships from that deployment. So it was pretty awesome. And then you'll kind of see that trend as I continue on with my story. That's something that I am a huge advocate for, is just finding a way to set yourself apart. Anyway, where was I? So I came back from my deployment, and then shortly thereafter I was there from 2014 until 2017. 2017 was the second trip to Creech Air Force Base. I PCS back there as a tech sergeant. I got to go right into the role of a flight chief, taking care of airmen. That's really where my passion is. And it's all airmen, officers enlisted. You have a problem, I want to help you solve it in some way, shape, or form. That's just how I've always been. And so got to do that. And then 2018 was the year that I was introduced to the Women's Initiative team. And it was one of the most life-changing perspectives I could have ever known, because I could have ever learned, because I had previously worked with fighter pilots who were forced to come fly MQ-9s, right? And they had this very disgruntled, I had this perception of them. They were pissed.
Oh yeah, I could actually attest to that. Yes, as
They
hated it.
Yeah. To learning that we had females in cockpits of these fast moving jets with no way to go to the bathroom, or very unsanitary ways to go to the bathroom, or very embarrassing ways to deal with their menstrual cycle, or just like, wow. I still gives me chills talking about it right now, because I was like, here I am thinking I had struggles, but we have these other women that are just trying to, fly a damn jet. So it was just eye-opening. So I got to spend the week with the team at Wright-Patterson doing the female fitment event. And the focus of that one was to just measure women of all sizes so that we could get better fitting uniforms, better fitting aircrew flight equipment, as far as the G-suits, the survival vests. Even some of that data went to our security forces members so that they could get proper fitting flak vests, if you will. And they're whatever those, I can't remember what they're called, but the vests that they wear for protection every single day. If you can imagine a flat plate on a large chested woman and how uncomfortable that is and how not very fitting that is. We took a lot of the data to help them create better gear for our security forces members as well. And when I say we, I say that now because I'm a part of the WIT, but like I was watching these colonels and generals. There was a couple of general officers that were there, and they were like, this is our initiative. And it blew my mind that the Women's Initiative team has been around since 2008, and I hadn't heard about it until 2018. So I'm not saying it was just interesting to hear that it had been around for so long and they had been fighting these issues for so long, because you would think that something as important, something as, what's the word I'm looking for? Instant, like we need these problems to be solved fast because we are continuing to open the aperture of recruitment of women. So why haven't we talked about these issues before? You know, like it was just kind of interesting. So it was just mind-boggling to think that we had these people fighting about that, or fighting for it. So I got to witness that amazingness with it was the urination devices, what the focus was on for that, so that they had proper hygienic ways. A lot of females at the time were tactically dehydrating themselves so they wouldn't drink anything for hours leading up to a mission, to a sortie, and they just wouldn't have to go to the bathroom until after. And you know, the second and third order effects of that is fatigue, your health, we need water. There were just a lot of things that came from that tactical dehydration that I was just like, wow, like these women are really, really trying to just, you know, be seen. It's not even like we're trying to be equal. We just want to be seen. We want to be able to sit in the seat and do the mission as much as possible. So watching the Air Force kind of take the initiative on finding many ways for women, you know, there are variants of the they're not called urination devices, there's another name, but essentially it's like a scientific name, I can't think of it, but essentially like ways that like men have their piddle packs, where it's kind of like a condom, if you will, that goes onto their penis and they're able to urinate. Simple as that. Women were a little more complicated. And oh, by the way, we have menstrual cycles. So asking for a piddle pack that, you know, kind of looks like a maxi pad, or one that fits different body types, because not all, you know, groin areas are built the same. And like, how can I find it's not a urination device, it is this device. Shit, it'll come to me eventually. But how do I find this device that fits my body, number one, and then also allows me to be able to go to the restroom without feeling embarrassed or having to wear a diaper? Because that, you know, that pilot that I knew back when I first joined, I asked her, I was like, how do you guys pee? And she's like, oh, I wear a diaper. And I was like, what? I was like, you're like 30. She was like, yep, well, that's what we did. I don't have to do that anymore. And I'm like, okay, like, welcome. And it never really set into me until I started seeing all of these changes. So the other thing too is menstrual cycles. Like, I've been a part of some conversations where they're like, oh, well, if you want to be, you know, the Army Ranger, maybe you should get a hysterectomy. Maybe you should like do all these things. And I'm like, so you want me to take away my God-given right so that I don't have a menstrual cycle, so that you can stay more comfortable in a combat field? How about we come up with better ways? And these are conversations that I had with just amongst peers and stuff like that. So luckily, no decision makers, but I was just like, it kind of set the tone for, you know, we always have to accommodate ourselves to fit the mold where is that being reciprocated, you know? And so even looking into these piddle packs for women, it would be like, one of the ideas was, hey, can we get a bag that's not clear? Because when I'm on my cycle, it would be great for me to not have to walk out with a bag of bloody mess. Oh yeah, that's something we can look into, you know, make it a brown color or a black color or something like that, right? Just things that people don't really consider if they don't have the familiarity with it. And so it was really eye-opening to see that and to see what came out of that. So we got, you know, better fitting, we got the female flight suits. So now we have a couple of options for whether if you're a fighter pilot, they have zippers that go further in the back so that you can actually wear your urination devices. And then also other ones that just, you know, like proper shoulders and proper waist and proper, you know, fitting around the bum. We have, you know, people of different races and ethnicities have different body shapes, right? So we shouldn't have to wear, number one, wear men's uniforms because they don't fit. Number two, be subjected to wear a flight suit that's too too tight or too large. I would like a uniform that actually fits my body. Something that I want to take across the finish line before I retire is the consideration for menses. As a woman is on her menstrual cycle, our bodies change. Breast tissue gets more dense. So a testament, my breasts grow about a cup size every time I'm on my period. And then I go into the bloating and the fatigue that comes along with that. Like the bloating, like we can all feel that. Like, girl, I'm to the point now where I have a medium and a large pant that I had to. And the other thing too is that our flight suits are not purchasable. We have to get them issued to us, right? So, and I know that this isn't like, I'm not trying to make it all about your crew, but like we can't just go and say, I'm on my period. I need another flight suit. No, we kind of have to build up the stock, if you will. So I actually have a small size, a medium size, and a large size. And according with where I'm at in my menstrual cycle, I wear those different sizes, right? And, same thing with my flight suits. I have a couple of different sizes of flight suits that I can wear when I'm, in my luteal phase, when I'm in my ovulatory phase. And it's just a lot of different changes. That's one thing that I would really like for the military to get serious about is looking into, like, women have always had menstrual cycles, and I'm not saying that we need to change everything about considering them, but there is a physiological and like physical change that happens to women every single month, and it shouldn't be ignored. Like we don't need the red carpet to be rolled out. However, whenever I say that, and especially people that have diagnoses. So I was recently diagnosed with adenomyosis, which is endometriosis is where organs start growing to your uterus. Other organs in your body grow onto your uterus. Adenomyosis is where your uterine lining attaches to the muscle of your uterus. And so that has caused me to have significant fatigue, severe menstrual cycles. My cycles went from like 3 days of, pretty light bleeding to 5 to 7 days of heavy menstrual cycle bleeding. It was bad. And so I went in, got the diagnoses, and now, the only cure for that is a hysterectomy, but I'm trying to have a baby, which that's something that we'll go into in just a minute with my marriage to the Air Force. But, I obviously don't want to get a hysterectomy. I don't want to take that part of my womanhood away. But also they prescribed me 800 milligram ibuprofen as a pain, something to help me through the pain each month, right? So I have like a supply of that to help me through that fatigue and everything. It's just one of those things where it'd be really great if we had a little bit more information on women's health and how it actually affects women and not hold it against women. My team has been outstanding that I work with right now. They have been outstanding with understanding when I need a little bit more time, or if I need to work from home or anything like that. It doesn't happen very often, but if I do need that, I'm very respectful. Like, hi, today is not a good day. I have this. You know what I mean? Like, I don't use my menstrual cycle to my advantage by any means, but when I know it's bad, I can explain that to my team and they understand that. So I'm very blessed in that sense to have that type of a working relationship with my coworkers right now. But it would be great to be able to open that up. And, even with infertility issues, I'm sure that all those people that have been working around radar systems or, in the flying community, working around any of those, like I call them trons, all the electromagnetic energy, how is that affecting their ability to have kids? Because I think that that's something that's really could have a little bit more focus on. So, and how does it affect our menstrual cycles as well? So that's something that I want to take across the finish line eventually. I'm due to retire in 2027. Thank goodness. Can't wait. I want to help people after I retire in the Air Force, but it's time for me to kind of focus on where I'm at. Girl, we got off on a tangent. This is my fault.
Okay, there's so many things I just want to like dissect and talk about. And here's the big one that you said a couple times is leadership. Having good leadership is key. And I cannot tell you, I had shitty leadership my whole time, to include at Creech, which is why I was like, I even palace chased 11 months before I had to be done. Actually, it was 6 months because I was like, fuck you guys.
Yes.
And that's how like the leadership can keep people in or they could get people out. And a quote that I've always said was people don't leave jobs, they leave managers. And that was a true situation. I have always said that if I had better leadership, I may have still stayed in.
Yeah. No, You did what
And it
was
sucks.
yeah.
But having good leadership is so important.
It
And
will
I get you're not always going to have it. And I think that's something that the Air Force and probably the whole DoD needs to take away is like Airman Leadership School. Let's revamp that whole thing and let's teach them how to actually be leaders.
yeah.
Don't teach me how to do a freaking EPR.
Yeah.
Or if
I'm
they change
so
it.
glad that you just said that, because that is an initiative. I just got to be on a
Mm.
operational planning team for where enlisted PME is going, and that is something that is going to be changed hopefully between Airman Leadership School, NCO Academy, and Senior NCO Academy. Revamping a lot of stuff there, because you are 100% right. There is definitely, when we have people, I had mentioned it earlier, being so black and white about things, we are far beyond that. We are so far beyond the regulation says that you need to be this way. Like, that was maybe where the Air Force was at 10, 15 years ago, as we had regulations and all that stuff. We have so many complex issues and so many complex individuals and so many complex families that we need to be able to look between in the gray area. And my best friend, who I've had in the Air Force for like 14 years, she would be so proud of me right now. We're saying that. She would be like, oh my gosh, she's talking about the gray area. Because I was such a rule follower,
But
Yeah.
it's true. Like, if you look at the regulations, like, so much of it is subjective, especially when it came to like women's
Yeah.
regulations. Like, nail color had to be conservative. Well, what conservative is to you is different than what is conservative to me. And then there was one time I had highlights and they called it too fattish. So again, it was subjective. So it's like,
I bet you were under the microscope too, because you probably had great hair. You're a beautiful woman.
oh,
You were
thank you.
successful. Somebody had a target on your back for some reason. That's something too that like I want to share, because I've never been married and I don't have any children, right? That has been a problem. That has been a problem for like meeting. I work with mostly men, right? When I meet their significant others, it's been so crazy over the years. People be like, if you hit on my husband, da da da.
I was going to say, do you get that a lot?
Girl, I had one that was just like, if you want to sleep with him, you can. I won't tell anybody. And I'm like, excuse me? What?
It's so bold.
Not what I'm here for. Thank you, but no thank you. Like, this is bizarre to me, because my job, like, I'm here, like, this is why I always talk about being married to the Air Force. I am here to do a job, and it has nothing to do with you or your relationship. I'm sorry if you guys are going through things. That's not my problem. You chose to get married. I have chosen not to. Like, do your thing, boo. But no, my intention is not to sleep with your husband. I had one at a Christmas party pull me aside and says, you should stop talking to my husband tonight because you are looking really good. And I was like, well, thank you. And now it's time for me to go, because I'm not dealing with this shit. I'm not going to be subjected to that, because I've chosen the life that I wanted. Of course, did I want to get married? Yeah, I do. Like, I do want that in my future eventually, but I've been dedicated to the Air Force for 17 years. That's it.
It honestly doesn't surprise me that happened to you because, like,
So stupid.
no, it is stupid, but it doesn't surprise me because I can't even tell you, it is a very male dominated career field. And then you sprinkle in a couple females and the harassment goes up, the jealousy goes up. Like, I met my husband in FTAC.
Yeah.
So I was one of 3 girls, and I can't even remember how many guys. But he would always joke. Well, I don't know if it's really joking, but he was always like, every guy was on your dick and da 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 da.
Yeah.
But because he knew that I was always surrounded by guys, that he never developed that jealousy. Because I confronted him, I was like, how come you don't get jealous or whatever? And he's like, you are in a career field and you're surrounded by guys all the time. He is like, that would be an issue for me, not you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so question for you, when you were in those rooms with other women, was it a competition or was it
Yes. And I think
right?
when the whole hair fetish thing
Yes.
and like my nails, yeah, every time, because the guys don't know the regulations for females. Let's be real. They don't even know the regulations for themselves.
Let me tell you about the time that I had a male flight chief come to me to say, hey, Amanda, female so-and-so, her flight suit's a little too tight. And I go, okay, so how are you going to tell her? He was like, well, I thought you could. No, she's not in my flight. She's actually in your flight. And if you feel uncomfortable to talk to her about her flight suit being too tight, then how can you really be a leader? Like, there's a proper way to go about it. And you don't have to be an asshole about it. What you can do is say, hey, I noticed that your uniform is becoming a little bit more form-fitting than what it used to be. Could I get you a different size? Is there something that I could do to help you with that? But coming to me saying that I need to fix it because I'm a female, that's not the answer. Same thing with regulation changes. Same thing with fingernails. I had one of my airmen that she was in my flight. Somebody came to me and said, you need to tell her about her fingernails. And so I go to her, I said, yeah, nails are looking a little long. Can you measure them for me real quick? And she goes, yeah. So she got a ruler. She goes like this. And she's like, they're within regs. And I go, thank you. I go back to the guy and I was like, her nails are in regs. Leave her the fuck alone. Like that's how it is.
The nail regulation always like pissed me off because I was like, I am capable of doing my job. I am in a skiff where you can't even see the damn fucking color.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
But I always
mine off because I'm getting ready.
I actually did too.
Yeah. I'm gonna go black. Now I can do black.
Yes.
I love black. It's my jam.
I love it.
Yeah, that's probably one of my biggest pet peeves is where somebody's like, can you tell her? No, but you can. You have two legs and a voice. You should go figure that out. And oh, by the way, if you don't feel like what you're about to say to her is appropriate, then maybe you should rethink that before and I actually have coached men through like, how do I address, we had a female that was pregnant and she was not considered a high risk pregnancy, but she was having complications through it. And he was like not down to have the conversation. And I was like, yo, dude, like you're her boss. Like you really need to dig into this with her. Like I can't tell you what's appropriate and what's inappropriate because like she's in your flight. You're gonna have to come up with what works for her. I will be there to mediate the conversation. Because on the flip side of that was she was taking everything that he was saying as an attack, right? And I was like, well, maybe it's the way that you're addressing it. So let me sit in on a conversation and see how it goes. And, watching them kind of interact, they both just accepted one another's message and defense mode. And like, it was just very weird. And that's kind of something that I've learned though, is some people just need a little bit of coaching to go through the hard and difficult conversations, but we're all willing and able to do it. Hopefully, like, I don't know. It's crazy.
I don't know how many people are willing and able to do that, but I do think that is kind of going back to the whole PME is maybe that should be something to establish and learn how to do. Like I am currently in PT school. So one of my classes was having like one of the assignments was having difficult conversations. How would you approach this? What if they said this? Like, and then reflecting back on, okay, this is how the conversation went. This is how I feel like it could have gone. Like it is something that should be taught.
Yeah. And that's like a lot of people, the buzzword recently has been emotional intelligence, right? It's past that. Like that's not really, you have to be, in order to have emotional intelligence, in my opinion, you have to be willing to see it from the other side, the opposing side. You need to be able to say, nope, that's a blue dress. No, it's a gold dress. Okay, why do you think it's gold? Okay, and let me interpret that and see if there's anything that falls in line. Well, you think it's gold because of the hues of the color, whatever. Okay, how do we get to a generalized, consensus of the dress is actually really blue, and or it's really gold. Like, how do you? I love that. That was such a bizarre time. COVID, go time. But like, like being able to listen to other people's side of like the side of their story, and that's kind of something that I've learned a lot through the Women's Initiative team. And then also like working at the Pentagon now where I have these conversations. Girl, the first time, like I was here for like 2 months and they're like, hey, agent, we've got this meeting with General so-and-so about the Flying While Pregnant program. Can you come to it? And I was like, me? I'm a master sergeant. Who, me? And they're like, yeah, you. And I went in that room. I sat at the edge of my chair, hands on my thing. And I was like, yes, no, yes. Like that was it. And the general was like, calm down. Are you okay? And I was like, I've never seen a general before. Like I just haven't had the exposure, And the general was like, hey, it's fine. Like, yes, I have the star, but I'm also a human too. And I was like, oh my God, thank you. You're so cool. And it was a very eye-opening experience, but it also set a tone for me was, when you speak to certain individuals and stuff like that, yes, they're human, but as we like go and try to take all of these changes across the finish line through legislation, laws, regulation changes, all that stuff, there literally needs to be a translator that says, all right, agent said, change the regs so that we can look into menses. And it goes to Congress as in, menses needs to be like it's a totally different language, right? But you have to be able to advocate for that in a different way. It's just very interesting to see that, and kind of the exposure that I've been able to see here working at the Pentagon. Like, it's been insane, but at the same time it's like eye-opening, because I'm like, how do I ask for this? Like, there's a little bit of I don't like the word manipulation because it has a negative connotation to it, but there's a way to like
Persuade.
Yes. There we go, girl. Same brain.
Yep. Great minds think alike.
Yeah. There's a way to be able to persuade someone not to say yes to it, but to say, like, I'll consider it. Get me more data. Get me more information on how you think that this is going to be the way forward with X, Y, or Z. And so that's been something that I've been working on endlessly with our, a little bit into the air crew management, but like now I'm working on the fighter, bomber, and trainer anthropometric study. Girl.
What is that?
It's the coolest thing since sliced bread. Oh my gosh. It's like, I'm jumping all over. I had like a whole, okay, whatever. So this anthropometric study is where, okay, we're trying to open the aperture of society into being able to fly aircraft, basically. So for example, if this is all just theoretical examples, but we did the F-16 study back in December. And so what we did was I went with the scientific team, Air Force Life Cycle Management, and they measured about 30 people, 25, 30 people. They measured men, women, didn't matter, so long as you were a military member, you had flight line access, whatever. Measured them, all these different measurements from like head height, eye height, and like all the things, right? And then they had a few of those people come back, the short people, the super tall people, the medium-sized people, and they put them inside of the cockpit of the F-16. And from that, they had them do, like certain, like obviously the jet was sitting on the ground, it wasn't doing anything, but they had this like scientific arm thing that was like on the side of the airplane, and it like helped measure like from the knee to wherever and from the arm to wherever, right? And they collected this data because, for certain career fields, you have to be a certain height. For career enlisted aviators, we had a table of, back when we had about 8 AFSCs, we had 8 measurements to be able to be a part of those crew positions. When I got to the Pentagon in 2022, we had just finalized the individual that was in the office before me. He had just finalized all of these anthropometric studies and gave me the data. So my job was to implement all of these new measurements into the medical standards directory. So now we have 30, like however many crew positions on different airplanes. We have about 30 measurements now that goes to the crew position in the airframe. And if you ever get bored, go to Google and look at the medical standards directory. It'll tell you to be a C-17 loadmaster, you need to be X tall. And that's kind of the information that we took from the CEA anthropometric study. So because I was able to implement that data that the team had previously worked on, and I created a really great working relationship with the Surgeon General team and the people who own the medical standards and all that stuff, I implemented that relatively quickly. Still, I'm sorting out a few things like the specifics on how we manage that on the enlisted side, but because I did such a great job of that, the officers had asked me, hey, agent, would you be willing and able to help us with the fighter, bomber, and trainer? And I was like, yeah, I mean, why not?
That's awesome.
So that's kind of where I fell into the WIT. Like after standing up that was the part of the story I wanted to talk about. We'll come back to this. After I went out to write Pat and I saw the WIT in action, I come back to Creech and I was like, holy shit, we need a WIT. Like, we need this bad because we have childcare issues, medical issues. The clinic that's out in Creech Air Force Base cannot help other than very basic dental and flight physical stuff.
Again, there is nothing out there.
Nothing.
Yes, nothing.
And I know that they're doing the best with what they have. Give them credit, But at the same time, if I am a pregnant mama who needs to have an ultrasound, that takes like 3 hours out of my day to drive from the north part of Vegas over to Nellis Air Force Base to do that. And oh, by the way, because Nellis is placed in the area that it's in comparison to Creech, you also can't get off-base referrals. because Nellis is, sorry, my puppy's going to start barking. Because Nellis is there as a way to go get your medical care. It's a mess. It's a huge
It is.
And, even going into, if a mama's about ready to deliver a baby, holy crap, if I have to drive up to Creech Air Force Base when I'm in my, third trimester, I ain't doing it. No. Like, it was just bad. So between childcare, uniform availability, medical, any of that stuff, there were a lot of struggles that we were able to bring to light to the wing leadership, which was sort of well received at the time, but we had a little bit of persuasion that we had to use to get them on board with it. Yeah, and it's, how like you're in a relationship and you like get into a fight? That was one of the things that I had full support on getting the WIT going with a couple of my very close friends that they took the WIT. Like I knew I was PCSing in 2022, so I had asked my two girlfriends that are very strong women. I was like, listen, I know if anybody can take this across the finish line, it's the two of you. So can you guys help push this? And they took it far beyond anything I could have ever asked for, to include lactation rooms in accordance with the regulation to be available for mamas who are breastfeeding so that they can pump. Coming up with a space for lactation, like because there wasn't one close by on the south side of base, they created one. Also with a meeting space for the women's initiative team, also where the uniforms are there for women to try on, also where they have another thing that's in there, uniforms, and then something else, I can't remember. But they set up this space essentially to collect all the information so that the WIT can continue to work towards whatever it is that the families need. Now, that's the other misnomer with the Women's Initiative team is, back in 2008, it was stood up because women weren't being considered. And a lot of discussions that needed to be considered that women needed to be a part of. So we got a little bit of backlash of like, well, if you're going to have a women's health symposium, why can't you do a men's health? And it's like, because you can get men's health anytime you want to. That's your God-given.
That's always their argument, though. Like, anytime we even put women in, like, a group or something, they're like, well, what about the man's? Like, International Women's Day, they're like, well, when's International Men's Day? And I was like, first off, look it up. There is an International Men's Day, but you guys just don't celebrate it as much as we do. So I actually did make a post one day because it was like International Women's Day in March, right?
Yeah.
And then I saw this post where it was like, oh, and for those who ask when International Men's Day is, it's on this day. And I just blasted it.
Good for you.
Because it's true. It's anytime that we say women this, women that, it's like, well, what about the men? And it's like, dude.
Yeah. Like, so I'm not even going to lie, coming up to getting ready for this podcast interview and stuff like that, I was doing a little bit of research because, like, if you can imagine, like, I just got back from the holidays. I don't know what day it is. What time is it? It's almost 10 o'clock here. I'm like drinking my nighttime drink, but I was like, I got to do my research. Okay. How long have women been suffering? Well, forever? Okay, cool. And it's still happening? Okay, cool. So a lot of the shit that women were going through back in the day have just resurfaced. Like, maybe not as abysmal as it used to be, but like, don't even get me started on Roe versus Wade.
I actually was talking to Erica King, and she's part of WIT as well, but she blew my mind that in like prior to 1975 that women could not serve and have kids at the same time. So if you got pregnant, you either had to get an abortion or you got kicked out of the military.
Do you know that some parts of that still exist for our USAPA cadets? Like, up until
I think they changed that.
They did. Yeah, but that was in the last 5 years.
I know.
Ah, yikes.
And it takes two, by the way, to get pregnant.
Yep.
Or at least two different things.
Yeah.
But
it's a whole thing.
Yeah. And you mentioned like the women's health. I think a lot of its resurfacing is because, or like kind of being more brought out is because there's not a lot of studies out there. If you look at the studies on like women's health, it's maybe like 50, 60 years old. Like there's not much as far as like women's health. Like I remember, so 2 of my pregnancies were on base, and the information that they gave me for pregnancy, like the pregnancy documents that they gave me, they were like, don't get your heart rate above 130. And I was like, you do realize like that's just me walking. And then I was like, but the advice and the suggestions that they gave me was so outdated because as like a fitness coach, like I knew that I specialize in pre and postnatal. I was like, this is completely inaccurate. Like, why are you giving people this outdated information? And now people are scared to go work out
Yeah.
while pregnant. And I was like, that's one of the best things that you could do. But yeah, the more that you look into women's health, a lot of the research isn't there because no one ever considered women's health.
Yeah. And that's like, I have a friend that I went to high school with, you know, my tiny little class. She's like a fitness coach as well. Excuse me, nutritionist and all the things. And she was like deadlifting in her third trimester. And I was like, you go, girl, do that. That's what's good for you. Like, so like, as long as you're feeling fine, like women know their bodies best, which is a foul. Like we do, but why can't doctors know too? And it was the same thing whenever I was trying to get my referral for my menstrual cycle changing. I was like, I know that it's not as bad as a severe menstrual cycle, but it's different for me. And so I need to be looked at. And he was like, yeah, of course. That is one good thing about the medical care that I have out here is that whenever I bring up anything, they're usually pretty accommodating for me to go to the OBGYN or whoever, but it's more of like, it's more of annoying.
So you set up the WIT at Creech,
Yeah.
and then your friends kind of took it.
Yeah,
and
way further than anyone could have ever imagined. They got into connection with local nonprofit organizations as well. Yeah, the WIT at Creech is still doing phenomenal work right now. But then kind of getting into where I'm at now is with my involvement with the WIT, and then also in the position that I'm in at the Pentagon, I have like direct contact with a lot of the decision makers that go into accessions and all of that stuff. When the anthropometric study came up for the the fighters, bombers, and trainers, they're like, hey, you know how to get it into the book. Do you want to be a part of the study? And I was like, sure. So I ended up coordinating for the last like 6 months or so. I've been coordinating to get all these studies complete, and we got the F-16s done. Next week is going to be 10s, and then F-35, and then B-1, and then B-2, and then F-22. Like, we've got it all happening.
I thought they were going to get rid of the A-10s though.
So we had the same consideration as well. They've been talking about getting rid of the A-10 forever, but we are still bringing new A-10 pilots in because our guard and reservists like still fly them. So we're still going to look to see if we can open the aperture, because even for men and women alike, like the United States continues to get more diverse, right? Like point blank. And as we look at different ethnicities and races, we need this information. Oh, by the way, hasn't been studied in over 20 years. So you take this back to early Afghanistan, when all we were flying at the time were like, you know, bombers and fighters, basically. And so taking the data and looking into, we're also like, we need more pilots in the Air Force. So what can we do to help recruit more people who want to fly and get more people in the cockpit? So that's something that I'm working on right now. And it's the coolest thing to watch these scientists go in there and like, they take all the different measurements we were talking about earlier, but like take the different measurements of the person and then sit them in the cockpit, and then they do all the things. We may be able to lower certain requirements so long as they can still safely and effectively operate the aircraft. So that's kind of the big thing that I'm helping out with now. So I'm like one of the sub LOE leads for the anthropometrics, kind of under that one size does not fit all LOE that we have, which is like, girl, I'm passionate about it. I love it.
And you're talking about trying to get these regulations and measurements in so people could come in. Is that kind of what's helping you push to try to get more recruitment, or maintaining the retention that we currently have?
Great question. It's both, right? So as we look into, like, as we look into future capabilities or anything like that, like, we have to consider where we're going in the future, right? And so I made the post on Facebook, like, hey, we have the F-35 study coming up in January. I was like, hey, if anybody wants to be a part of it, whatever. And we completed the F-16 study. And I think when I posted that, like, people were like, oh, like, the regs when are they going to be published? Because right now I'm flying this aircraft and I really wanted to fly that aircraft. What can I do? And so I think it's twofold. Like, it's going to help us assess more people in, but it's also going to help people go back to go fly an aircraft that they want to. So hopefully it may help retention as well. Because, you know, once you're assigned to an aircraft, you know, like a cargo aircraft or whatever, a lot of people love that mission, but it's a lot of deployments and it's a lot of like frequent short deployments, right? So whereas if you're with a different airframe, the deployment schedule might look different. It might be a little bit more appealing to your family and lifestyle. So it's not going to be like, today I want to fly this aircraft, tomorrow I want to fly that one. No, it's going to have to be like meet the needs of the Air Force and all of that stuff, but opening the ability for people to say, okay, I've flown the C-130 for the last 10 years. I want to try something different. And I want to go see how I could do in the fighter world. Okay, cool. Maybe we can get you over. And that's a just off the top of my head idea. Logistics of that are very complex to get somebody to move from aircraft to aircraft. But just as an example, it's opening up the ability to be able to move people to where they want to go fly.
You're like doing such amazing work with that. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Me either.
That just sounds so cool though. Because I did know with certain aircraft and aircraft frames that you had to be like a certain height, and like there were like restrictions. And then like knowing that now we actually have the data for it is huge.
Yeah. And it's, the measurements for pilots as they're flying, they're a lot more intricate because, if you're flying I just keep going back to the fighters because they're the most complex aircraft that we fly. They go like the knee to butt length. Like that has to be a specific length because if it's too long, you're not going to be able to safely eject out of the aircraft, right? If you do, you're going to bust off the bottom of your legs. Like, wow, I don't want that to happen. And so like there's a lot of the stuff that goes into it that is just, I got to go out to it wasn't Wright-Patterson, it was Toledo Air National Guard. My kudos out to that unit. They were so welcoming and so accommodating throughout the entire process of planning it and going out there. But they gave us a jet for a week and they're like, yeah, do your study, go figure it out. And that's where I got to sit down with the scientists and watch them collect all the data. They explained everything to me. They put me through the cockpit twice just to make sure that I fully understood, and then also I did act as a test participant as well. But just to see like they go down to the nitty gritty of like measuring from like the certain bone in your shoulder down to a certain point on your wrist and how far can you reach and like they triangulate everything. When they take it back to the lab, they triangulate it to be like, okay, so the smallest arm length that we could accept is this. So maybe I have someone that is 5'2", but they have their sitting height is adequate enough with the helmet. They're 5'2", sitting height is good, knee to butt is good, reach is good. They have these long, gangly arms. We talk about like a monkey. It was kind of funny. It's fun to like, I was running around the hangar with them. I'm like, look. I'm just a weirdo like that. But I was like, so somebody with like maybe a shorter torso or a longer torso with long arms could be shorter and be able to fly the F-16. Like, that's amazing. Because before, like, we wouldn't, it just hasn't been measured. And so that's what we're doing. We're just updating the data to see if, my part of, I like put my Pentagon hat on in the position that I'm in, and then I put my WIT hat on, right? And so when I'm working with the WIT, obviously I'm like, everything, like we need all the information so that when it goes to the decision makers, they have the information they need to make the right decision, right? And so what my role in that is going to be is once we get the data from the lab, I'm going to present it to the decision makers, to include a general officer, some colonels, the career field managers for the affected AFSCs, to say, hey, sir and ma'am, this is what it is right now. Based on scientific data, we could lower it to this, or it needs to be higher, like based on whatever the data shows, so that, the thing that we're most concerned with is safe and effective operations. We don't want to put people in the cockpit that are going to blow off their kneecaps, right? Like we don't want that to be something, but we do want to make sure that if we have the ability to open the aperture, we can do that. So it's going to be awesome. And I have a great working relationship with all of those people. That's, one of the things that I pride myself on is I'm such a people person that I really try to make it as least complicated as possible, because like talk to me like a human, let me know. But then that's kind of where I put my WIT hat on and I'm like, blah, 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 blah. And then I put my Pentagon hat on and I'm like, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. How do we get this message across? It's kind of funny.
I love it. We need women like you, though, in there that are a people person and taking the initiative for things like this. Because you're right. Like, as I'm going through PT school, like realizing that even your limbs aren't the same length. And your body is just so crazy. And if someone can, and let's talk about like BMI, the BMI scale pisses me off. Like I have muscle's more dense than fat. So like to the Air Force, I'm considered obese. And I'm like, I'm a size 8. Like,
Pretty damn.
no, but so it's annoying, but it is nice to see that people are taking that initiative to like learn the different body types and to see, is this going to be a safe and effective mission? Because obviously that should be always like a top priority for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And to get people to do what they wanted to do. Like, you know, go back to why I joined the Air Force. Never in a million, girl, I was a volleyball player, high school cheerleader, country girl. And then I'm slinging missiles on MQ-9s and now I'm affecting change. Like, what? Never in a million years would I have thought that I would be sitting in this seat right now. But it's like, it's awesome. Great.
So with that being said, I mean, since we kind of talked about your journey and stuff like that, what advice do you have for those young women that do want to consider a career in the military?
Ooh, girl. The $1 million question, right? That's like, okay. Something that I have learned since getting to the position that I'm in right now is that no matter where you go, you're going to have struggles. That should be expected. I showed up to the Pentagon as a master sergeant. I found out 3 or 4 months into being here that I was selected for senior master sergeant. Yeah, it was great, right? Like,
congrats.
16 years senior master sergeant, that's phenomenal, right? Thank you. And I look back and I'm like, the amount of work that I put into that, like what was like the one common factor that no matter what the struggle was, no matter what the obstacle was, no matter what the triumph was either, right? Was I always remained humble because again, I was the first female instructor at my tech school, but that was never celebrated. Do I tell people that? Hell yeah, I do because I'm fucking proud of it. But do I expect other people to acknowledge it the same way that I do? No. Is it unfortunate? Sure. But at the same time, I'm not going to let someone's lack of empathy affect the way that I am, right? And so not everybody is going to see how you shine, and that's okay. Not a single one of us on this world is made to appease every single person. And so as my career has progressed, my circle has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. And I know that we say that like as we're getting older. Like, how old are you?
34. I had to think about that.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I just turned 37, right? And as we grow older and our priorities change, like a family, or you know, I pride myself on being married to the Air Force because I've been able to give the Air Force everything because I don't have a family and because I don't have any other obligations other than my 3 beautiful little puppies that I've been raising. Like I'm able to sacrifice a lot, or I don't have to sacrifice as much rather, because it's just me, right? And that's a choice that I've made. However, when I go into watching what my circle looks like, you know, girl, I was 21 years old in Vegas, had the best time of my life. I got a limo, I got a table with bottle service, I did all the things, right? Like, I lived my best life. I always did what was best for Amanda. And that is something that nobody else can tell me what is right. And the beauty of that is that as I reflect on how the hell I even got here, is amazing. There was an opportunity. I'm not going to say opportunity because that sounds positive. There was a point in my life where I didn't think I wanted to live anymore. And I chose to stay through therapy, through great friends, you know, medicine as well. I am medicated right now because the stress and anxiety is like a whole new level. But I always go back to who is Amanda. I go back to my country roots. I'm a small town girl who always cares about everybody all the time. Can it be a detriment? Yes, it can. However, I go back to who I am and maybe curtail it a little bit to my audience. But I always stay true to who I am. And I always have validation for what it is, like why I choose to do something. Like, why did I, choose to be a part of the WIT? Because I didn't know how bad it was for women until I knew. And then once I found out about it, that became my passion. So I don't think that everybody needs to stay in the military for a full career either. I've had many men and women alike come to me and say, Agent, I don't think I can do it anymore. And I'm like, cool. What are your pros and cons? Why do you want to stay? Why do you want to go? Which one's more important to you? Do I think you should stay? Yes, because I love you and I see what you do. But if it's not right for you, don't stay. The only reason why the military kept me for so long is because they kept dangling this sick ass re-enlistment bonus, and I took it. Let
I
me
mean,
keep it real.
that's why I did my reenlistment.
Yeah. The first time I was a senior airman, I got a $90,000 bonus. That's literally the reason why I reenlisted. The second time I reenlisted is because I made tech sergeant and I needed a PCS. The third time I went on an indefinite, which I needed to do that to get my orders here to the Pentagon. So, and I didn't get a bonus or anything like that, but I knew that taking the job that I'm in right now was going to be a really smart move for Amanda, but also to be able to help the people around me and in my career field, right? And I showed up here like, why the fuck did I do this? It was miserable. Brittany, you talked about it in the beginning. Leadership is everything, right? It will make or break your assignment. And I had some less than desire. I had backtrack. Back when I was in Vegas, I was medicated. I went to NIV for 6 months, was taking care of Amanda because that's what Amanda needed. A lot of PTSD, a lot of, post-COVID stuff was happening with me. So I got on medication for anxiety and depression and stress. Right before I left there, I got approved to get back on flight status. I flew a couple missions and then I PCS'd out here, right? I also had talked to my mental health provider at the time and I was like, hey, medicine isn't really working out for me. Like, I'm great that I was able to get on a balanced dosage, but I don't want to be on medication forever. So I hired my life coach that I had for a second time, and she helped me through moving from Vegas out here to the Pentagon as I kind of trickled down from getting off my medication. And then I took a lot of the things that my coach taught me with, continuing with exercise, diet, making sure that I stayed on a good schedule, making sure that I, had a really good habit pattern with my daily and nightly routines and all that stuff. And, I showed up here and I was like, fuck yeah, this is the best thing. It was great. Everything was great until it wasn't. And there was that one troll sitting under the fucking bridge trying to get in my way. That no matter what I said or did, it was always an argument with that individual. And there was nothing I could say that would ever be enough for that person. And it sent me back into this spiral. And I'm not blaming that individual for why I started binge drinking again, why I gained 30 pounds, why I started eating like shit, why I stopped, like all of the things. No working out, not walking the dogs as much. I didn't blame that person for it. In the beginning, I did. I'm gonna keep it real. In the beginning, I did. I was like, this person is a complete jackass. I hate him. Everything's horrible about this person. Blah blah blah. But then I got into my slump and I was like, okay, so this is familiar. I've been here before. What can I do to help myself? And so I went back to the doctor, to my mental health care provider, and got back on medication, which has been helping me significantly. But that was like the other thing that I would tell anybody is when you know your limit, like you know you better than anyone else. When you know your limit and you know that you need help, go ask for help. That is admirable. That is something that needs to be celebrated. When someone notices that they can't do it anymore, or the going is too tough, or the person is too tough. My therapist and I don't even talk about the childhood trauma that I went through. We don't talk about that stuff anymore because what she's coaching me through is how to deal with these fucking people when they want to be such a nuisance. Like, and I hate to say the word nuisance, but it's just like, you don't have to fight with me about everything, dude. Like, how about you try to see it from my perspective? Instead of just saying that you are the dictator, you are the one that makes all the decisions, maybe let's have a conversation. And the sad part about it, Brittany, he was a peer. He was a peer of mine that I let just bring me into this spiral. So I accept responsibility for the fact that I kind of lost my shit a little bit when I first got here. And it wasn't up until about a year ago that finally things started getting better. I learned to let go of that person. That person no longer works with us anymore, so that's even better. But it's just kind of one of those things where as you go through, like, expecting you're going to hit roadblocks, expecting you're going to have people that oppose your ideas, expecting that, you're going to be Air Force in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, the Air Force is not fucking perfect. Far from it. But do know that so long as you come up with, if you can stay true to yourself and you can come up with a great plan for yourself and you have supportive leadership, which I know is a lot of the times it's outside of our control, but this is why we have, first sergeants, we have Airman Defense Council, we have patient advocate. If you have issues with, medical care and all that stuff, you have mentors like myself. Always, if anybody is ever like, Amanda, let me talk to you about something. Yes, please. Even if I don't know anything about it, I'm about to go get smart on it. because my job, and when I say my job, I'm not just saying as a senior, I'm saying as a peer, as a friend, as a human being. Like, I just genuinely want people to be able to stay true to themselves and find a way to make the Air Force work out. And guess what? Sometimes it doesn't work out. So I will fully support an airman. I had an airman come to me that just retrained out of sensor operator to another career field. And she was like, this ain't it. And I was like, okay, so what's your plan? Like, what are we doing? Like, how can I help you? Because I was a part of helping her cross train. And she was like, is there any way I could go back? And I was like, I don't know. How about you just try to stick it out a little bit longer? And like, if it gets bad, just call me. Like, there's nothing that you should do that you need to like be in pain, or, you know, not like physical pain, but like you shouldn't have to go through agony to be proud of something that you do. However, if there's anything I can do to help people work through the bullshit, we know there's going to be bullshit, right? So what can we do to help people? And so like, I just, you know, as soon as I'm eligible for retirement, girl, I'm out. I'm going to put dreads in my hair. I'm going to be so cool. I'm already covered in tats. I'm going to keep getting tattoos. I'm about to have my baby. I'm going to devote my life to that baby. It's going to be so great. But it's at the same time, like, I just, you know, while I was home for Christmas, my niece is thinking about joining the Air Force. And I had to have the conversation with her. She's 19. She'll be 19 this summer. And she's like, do you think I would like it? And I was like, nope, you're going to fucking hate it. You're really going to hate it. But do I think I could help you in some way, shape, or form build the life that you want to live? I do. Do I think that I see my niece staying in for 20 years? Fuck no. It takes a lot of patience to be able to stay that long, even through a 6-year enlistment. That's a lot of patience. 10 years, like, you have to re-enlist once. 10 years, that's a long time. Whenever I got at my 12-year mark, I was like, well, fuck it. I guess I'm doing 20, because I didn't plan on doing 20, but I guess now I have to, you know? But it's just like, looking at my niece, my 18-year-old niece, soon to be 19, and even like looking at her being like, do I think the Air Force is good? Yes. Do I think it's good for everyone? Absolutely not. Do I think everybody should do it for 20 years? Fuck no. I don't think so. I think that there's a reason as to why we have the benefits that we have. And until you're able to commit your life, marry the Air Force, and be able to deal with the bullshit, like, that's just what, you know what I mean? Like, as we go through, I never want anyone to change who they are holistically to be able to serve in the Air Force, or in the military in general. Don't ever lose sight of who you are. I am just now tapping back into who I was before I joined the Air Force, because I realized the Air Force is temporary. Even if I were to do one enlistment or 30 years, I'm going to get out of the Air Force eventually. How do I get back to my roots, and how do I continue to serve while staying true to myself? So it's just, that would be, just get ready for the ride, ladies and gentlemen, and especially ladies, get ready for the ride, because it's not going to be an easy path. It's going to be support. It's not competition. Like, sure, promotion is something that you want, but we as women need to lift one another up and not compete with each other. Yes, there will be natural competition in there, but as I continue to grow older and my circle kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller, I have 2 friends in DC that I speak to on a constant basis. One of them was working for the Secretary of Defense. The other one was working in the White House. And I say that because they are the ones that I want to spend my time with. And it's not that I have piss on friends. Like, that's not what I'm saying. Do I still hang out with other people and other women and men? Yes, I do. But do I listen to the things that they have to say? Not nearly as much as I do those 2. I call them my dime pieces. They're like quarters, but 2 quarters. Everybody has value and a place in your life. And I know that, like, having my 2 close friends out here, like, they're the reason why I've been able to withstand the bullshit. And they're also Air Force as well. So they get it. They really get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you hit like spot on like so much of that, right? Like, you have to stay true to yourself. I knew when I joined that I was probably only going to do 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I had someone told me, he was like, if you're at your 3-year mark, are you going to be glad that you have 1 year left or 3 years left? Because I was debating between the 4 or 6 year enlistment. And I was like, I knew coming in that I was probably not going to make it a career. I thought I was going to go to law school. I thought I had a completely different life plan that I'm currently on. And that's another thing too. Like life is a journey. You're going to figure out what you want to do as you get older. If you asked me 15 years ago what I wanted to do, it is definitely not anything I'm doing now. So I knew I was only going to do it for 4 years. But then my husband re-enlisted, and that was, I knew was going to be something important, was building a family with him, and he got orders to my knot, and I was like, no. So then they offered that little re-enlistment bonus, and I was like, yes, the Air Force is getting another 4 years out of me. But then it was, okay, it's time to focus on Brittinie. It may not have to be 20 years, and you just got to stay true to like yourself, and you do have to weigh the pros and cons. So when my husband got orders to my knot, I was like, okay, what's the pros and cons? And I looked at the job market, I looked at the schooling, I looked at all these other things, and I was like, it really would just be better if I re-enlisted. So you really do have to weigh out those pros and cons. And I will say, even just doing a few years, the education benefits are just phenomenal. I got my bachelor's in the Air Force and my CCAF, but whoever uses that. My bachelor's, my master's through my GI Bill, and now I'm getting a doctorate through my GI Bill, and not having to pay one fucking dime.
Dr. Brittinie in the house.
I know, December.
Cool.
But honestly, it's like the best thing. Like these kids that are coming in like 22, 23, going into this DPT program, they're going to have $100,000 in debt. So that's another thing you kind of have to think about. Again, stay true to yourself. Obviously, I didn't do 20 years, but doing the Air Force was the best decision for me. Like I will never regret ever signing up. I just knew from an early on. And to be honest, though, I'm actually thinking about trying to come back in as the physical therapist. So you might actually miss it. I mean, you really have to do that self-reflection. Ask yourself those hard questions. So for people who do want to reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
My Facebook is something that I am down to share with everyone. It's actually Holland and then Amanda, as I flipped the names. Back when I was at Creech, I had to use different names and all that stuff. But they can find me on social media. I have Instagram, Agent Mandy with an I. And my email address as well is just amandaholland587@gmail.com. I'm always willing to help in any way, shape, or form that I can. Even if you just need to scream, if you just need somebody to talk to, like I'm here for you.
I think that this has been like one of my favorite conversations. Like you're just so amazing. And doing all this stuff with the WIT program and just taking the initiative and working at the Pentagon and just being the badass that you are. So thank you for sharing everything that you're doing and everything that you have done. What is one key takeaway that you wish people would take out of this podcast?
Empowered women empower women. We need to lift each other up. That's what we need to do. It's not a competition. How do we help one another? Empowered women empower women.